Hi everyone and welcome back to Tennis Time. This has been a pretty exciting US Open on the women's side and on the men's side as well. We've had the women's semi-finals already, now the men's semi-finals are coming up. Many people have talked about this US Open, whether there is supposed to be an asterisk on it or not. I thought at the beginning of the tournament that there shouldn't, even though Nadal and Federer could not enter the field or did not enter the field. But Djokovic was still there as one member of the big three. He was the red hot favorite. Something pretty unexpected happened in the sense that he got defaulted, so nobody has beaten him. He struck a line judge in the throat, and fortunately for him, that meant default. So we're not going to have any of the big three members in the semi-finals. Nonetheless, I think we're going to have two great matches, especially the second semi-final between Dominic Thiem and Daniil Medvedev, the number 3 in the world and the number 4 in the world. It's definitely going to be a very interesting clash, and I'm going to tell you a little bit later why. But first, let's have a look at the first 8 seeds, what we've had in the tournament so far. So, as you can see, Djokovic was the number 1 seed, Thiem the 2nd, Medvedev the 3rd, Tsitsipas 4th, Zverev 5, Berrettini 6, Goffin 7, and Bautista Agut number 8. So this looks a pretty solid first 8 seeds. As I've said, Djokovic went out when playing Pablo Carreño Busta. When he was defaulted, the number 2nd and 3rd seed are still in the tournament. They're playing against each other in the semis. Tsitsipas went up relatively early against Coric in a crazy match where he had 6 match points in the 3rd round. Now Zverev has played pretty okay in his tournament, generally speaking, but we're gonna get into that a little bit later on when we're going to preview his match against Pablo Carreño Busta in the semis. Berrettini out to Rublev in a tough match. Goffin also out to Shapovalov in the 4th round. Not so much of a tough match. Shapovalov steamrolled him. And Bautista Agut, a little bit surprisingly, out to Pospisil in 3 sets after making the so-called Cincinnati semi-finals against Djokovic the week before or 2 weeks before. So let's take a look at each man's route to the semis so far. So let's start with the number 2nd seed, Dominic Thiem. As you can see, his first match on Louis Armstrong against Munar. That was a cut short match, not even 2 hours, because Munar had to retire, unfortunately for him. Then round 2 against Nagal, just 1 minute shy of 2 hours. Nagal, not really big threat against Thiem. Relatively weak first serve and second serve especially, so Thiem was pretty dominant. 3rd round against Cilic, that was a competitive match, especially the 3rd and 4th sets. That was an exciting and watchable match. 4th round against Felix Auger-Aliassime. I expected that to be a little bit closer, similarly how the first set was 7-6 to Thiem, but Felix was a little bit punch shocked, I could say, after that first set. Thiem was really hitting very hard, very strong, and although Auger-Aliassime is a great mover, sometimes he felt like he still out hit in many of the shots, and he couldn't really stay too competitive against Thiem in the fourth round, in the 2nd and 3rd sets. And then moving on against de Minaur in the quarters, so that was an impressive display. And for Thiem, who normally spends a lot of time in matches and slams, this time he was pretty quick. So for 5 matches, 10 hours and 32 minutes, for him, I think that's a really solid performance. And next up, his opponent Medvedev in the semis, so let's have a look at his route to the semi-finals. We're playing Delbonis in the 1st round, 1-2 and 2, 1 hour 46, pretty quick. Second match against Chris O'Connell from Australia, 3-2 and 4. A little bit longer, but also super impressive display, 2016 minutes. And he played Wolf in the third round, very young, big prospect from the USA, but also dispatched pretty dominantly, 3-3 and 2. Then Tiafoe, I thought Tiafoe may put up a bigger of a fight, but he didn't, especially second and third set were very quick, so 1:38. And then Rublev, that was a big match, and that's a very important match in, at least for me, to seeing it and trying to predict his clash against Thiem, because Rublev is the kind of guy who hits the ball very hard, and he's been very successful at the beginning of the year. He still looked very good, and you thought he may have a chance against Medvedev. And the way the first set went, you couldn't really tell them apart. Both were very dominant on their service games, and it was anybody's game to win in the tiebreak. And Rublev was actually 6-3 up at 3-6 in the tiebreak. Medvedev was serving. He held his two serves, then made the mini break back, took it to 6-all, and then it was 8-6 to him. So Medvedev clearly was the more solid-headed guy in this clash, and I think that first set decided the match for him. There was one single break in the match which Medvedev managed to get in the second set, so he took that set 6-3. He may seem a little bit uncomfortable physically in the third set, but he still got it on a tiebreak. So I think, given the fact how tough Medvedev is, he's going to be fine in the match against Thiem. I thought it was super impressive from Medvedev that, given the way he normally plays, he's really apparently the more grinder type of player. He gets a lot of balls back, runs down incredibly lots of balls, and rarely misses, so he almost never misses. And I thought, okay, this will be very interesting against Rublev, because Rublev has a great firepower, and will Medvedev be able to hold that power off and be consistent enough to put Rublev off? But that's not what happened in the match, because Rublev was hitting as hard as he usually is, but Medvedev was matching that. So I thought that was super impressive, that next to his incredible defensive abilities that he seems to be having, he also managed to be on the attack when he felt that he needed to attack. So that brings me to the matchup with Thiem, or against Thiem. But let's talk about that a little bit later on when I get to the exact prediction of the match. If we look at Zverev's route, so he's the guy who spent most time of the 4 semi-final contenders on court during these first 5 matches. He had a relatively long first round, but a reasonably good match against Kevin Anderson, winning it in 4 sets, 307 minutes. Round 2 against Nakashima, again 4 sets, almost 3 hours. Round 3 against Manarino. Although he lost the first set, Manarino wasn't himself in the third and the fourth. He wasn't moving as he should have. He was clearly injured, so relatively easy win there. Against Davidovic Fokina, that was his quickest and most dominant match. And then against Coric, 3 hours 26 minutes. That was his longest, and I was a little bit surprised actually that he's managed to win that match in 4 sets. So you're thinking, here is the quarterfinals of a Grand Slam, especially in a year like this. You have to feel a little bit fortunate to be there, to be in that position and to play for a semi, and potentially after Djokovic being out, it's anybody's game to take. We have the chance to get a new Grand Slam champion at a major event. And I don't know, but in that first set he looked like he didn't really want to be there on that court. He was lethargic, walking around, feeling a little bit like, I mean, it made me not wanting to watch that match. It was so bad. Coric was playing pretty solid tennis, but he didn't really have to do anything extraordinarily special to win that set, which he took 6-1. So in the second set, Zverev sort of has managed to wake up. And although Coric was 4-2 up, he's broken back. He's edged the tiebreak, he's edged the next set's tiebreak, and he's got a break in the fourth and took it 6-3. So I'm having a little bit trouble of deciding on Zverev, which Zverev, and in what kind of mood he's going to be in when he plays Pablo Carreño Busta, but certainly I hope for his sake that it won't be like against Coric in that first set. And talking of Pablo Carreño Busta, let's have a look at his route. So he's the guy who spent the second most time on court, almost 12 hours. He was playing Uchiyama in the first round, and that was a 5-setter, almost 3.5 hours, so a tough match. He was a bit more fortunate in the second, playing Kruger, the American, 1-2 and 2, that was quick, 1.5 hours. Against Berankis, again, relatively quick match, 3 straight sets, again, and then against Djokovic. Just the one set in 1 hour where he was a break up at 6-5, and then Djokovic was defaulted, so he didn't spend too much energy on that one. But he most certainly did spend a lot of energy in the quarterfinal against Shapovalov. A tough 5-setter where he was 2-1 up, but in the fourth he looked dead. He looked like he was really gone. But he probably managed to save all his energy for the fifth set, where he pounced and he took it 6-3 against Shapovalov. So I think even though he had a very long and tough match in the quarters, I think he will be recovered and he will be fine when he's going to play Zverev. So let's take a look at the head-to-head history and let's make a prediction for the final. So Zverev and Pablo Carreño Busta have met only once throughout their careers, and that was on a hard court, which is a little bit slower than what we have here at this year's US Open. It was in Miami in the semis, where Zverev has won 7-6, 6-2. So looking at these two players' games, definitely you have to give the first serve to Zverev. Second serve will be an important factor. He doesn't like to hit a kick serve, Zverev. He slices it and he misses the slice serve a lot. It also depends, I think, on his on his mood and disposition of play. So if he's in a good mood and if he's feeling confident, he probably won't miss that many second serves. But that's definitely a factor we need to watch out for, because if he goes on and hits 20 double faults in the match, that may cost him dearly and he might lose. On backhand strengths, consistency, forehand strengths and consistency, I think on power, Zverev is definitely above Pablo Carreño Busta, so he's a lot more confident and comfortable hitting through the court, and he will probably be able to hit a lot of winners if his game is on. On the other hand, Carreño Busta, he's more powerful on the consistency side, so he's definitely going to put a lot of balls back into court. And sometimes if both players are going to be a little bit tentative, we may have many long rallies, which without any player attacking too much might get a little bit boring, but let's see what happens. If I would have to pick one of these two, expecting to Zverev show up at least in the form he's shown against Coric in the third set and the fourth set, I would have to go with him, and I would predict him to go through and win that semi-final and get to his first Grand Slam final ever. Okay, going ahead. So, head-to-head history, Team Medvedev. So these players have met 3 times. Team leads the series 2-1, but the last match was won by Medvedev last year during the summertime in Canada in the quarterfinals. I think the 2019 Spain final in Barcelona, team winning 6-4, 6-love, you can pretty much throw that out of the window because that's clay, and I think there's no discussion that team is definitely the better player and the more favoured player to win on clay. The St. Petersburg quarterfinal match on hard court, that was a very close match, team winning the quarterfinal 7-6 in a breaker in the decider, but Medvedev was not yet in his form of his life, which started last year in the US at the Washington tournament, where he's gotten to the final. After that, reaching the Canadian final, where he en route has beaten has beaten team, as you can see. Lost to Nadal in the final, but won the Cincinnati Masters afterwards after the Canadian one, beating Djokovic in the semis there. And after that, reaching the finals of the US Open, then winning Shanghai, then winning St. Petersburg. So that was the amazing run Medvedev had in the second part of the year. Team has also improved, I think, since that Canada Masters match from last year in the quarterfinals, which he's lost pretty convincingly. So he's made a lot of improvements to his hardcourt game, and he's the one who's played the finals at the ATP World Tour Finals at the end of last year. He's played on hardcourts at the Aussie Open. The finals against Djokovic, he's almost managed to pull off the win, getting his first Grand Slam final, but he was a little bit short. And now, if this was a clay court, or even if this was a slower hard court like Indian Wells, I would say Team is the more favourite guy to win. But given the fact that this hard court seems to be a little bit quicker than it was last year at the US Open, I think that may favour Medvedev. So Medvedev, as I said before, he is playing so well against Rublev, against the power hitter. He was retrieving incredibly well, but he was also able to attack and hit that forehand so hard. I thought the forehand was always a factor for Medvedev because he wasn't consistently hitting that forehand hard enough, not enough to bother Team maybe. But for Team, it's going to be more difficult to attack Medvedev on a consistent basis. The way he stands on that tennis court, the way he returns, he's very far behind that baseline. When he's hitting his ground strokes, he's also very far behind the baseline. And on a clay court, that's not a problem for him, but on a hard court, on a quicker hard court, he doesn't have so much time to prepare those long swings. So if for whatever reason he will be able to make Medvedev really uncomfortable and be on the attack all the time, and if his game is really, really on, like he was playing against Djokovic in last year's semi-final of the World Tour Finals, then he can win. But I think there are just too many things that need to work well for Team, and I'm not sure that he will be able to pull this off in a 5-set match. So I'm giving the edge to Medvedev, and I think he's the one who's going to win either in 4 or in 5 sets. So I see a Zverev against Medvedev final, and I think whoever wins the semi between Medvedev and Team is the one who's going to win the tournament. But since I've picked Medvedev to beat him in this semi, I think it's going to be Medvedev who will be the 2020 US Open champion. This was a little bit of a long video, but I think, or I hope you've enjoyed it. I would very much like to read your opinion. What's your take on this? Do you think Thiem is the favorite? Do you think Medvedev, or maybe Zverev, or maybe even Carreño Busta might be the favorite for it? Alright, thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below, and in case you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for tuning in, and see you after the finals.